I went through 140 different stocks whose ticker symbol starts with the letter D in order to find one that I could invest $1,000 into. I went through a 4-step process that narrowed that 140 down to 1, and it wasn't Disney, and it wasn't Domino's. I went through a qualitative filter that narrowed it down to 10. That's just to make sure that I understand the business and that I like what they're doing. That 10 went down to 6 when I did a quantitative filter to make sure that I understood how they were spending money. Then I ran that 6 through my checklist, which went to 2. Those 2 were Donaldson and John Deere, and I ended up going with John Deere. We ended up with $1,001.25 of John Deere stock at $380.51 a share. That's what I did. But let me tell you why. Now, John Deere is, of course, the world's largest manufacturer of agricultural equipment. But the more I looked into them, the more they reminded me of a certain technology company. When it comes to selling agricultural equipment, they are definitely one of the higher end, more expensive brands. They're very focused on sales and are actually great at marketing. You can tell by the very bright green and yellow they put everywhere, and they put all of it to use in creating great customer-centric products. John Deere is actually over 155 years old, so we've got to go all the way back to this guy. This is John. John was a blacksmith in the early 1800s who moved out to Illinois, where he came across a problem. The farmers were using either wooden or cast iron plows. And these were not tractors. We're not anywhere close to tractors yet. These old plows had been taken to new soil. This was the soil of the Midwest, and it was much more clay-like and would stick to the cast iron or the wood. Even though it did the job, you'd have to constantly stop what you were doing and get off and go clean it. Being a blacksmith and seeing this problem, John figured that rather than using cast iron or wood, a polished steel would prevent the sticking for these plows. He was able to sell the first one in 1838 to a local farmer. This farmer, seeing how well his plow solved the problem, told some friends, and then he sold 2. And then by 1841, he was selling between 75 and 100 a year. And remember, agriculture is not just agriculture. The faster that you get food in a place, the faster you can get people in a place. So John Deere actually helped accelerate the migration of Americans to the Great Plains. And you can tell that they were focused on marketing from the very beginning because he moved to Moline, Illinois, so that he could be next to the Mississippi River, which would help with the distribution and production. And at that time, the common practice was to wait for someone to tell you they needed something and then build that something for them and sell it to them. What John did was the opposite, where he built as many as he could and then got the customer to come, look at it, show it to them, and then they could buy it on the spot. By 1849, they were selling over 200 plows a month. Think about that. Where are all those plows going? The amount of farmland in the United States used to be distributed across a lot more individual owners. And while companies have a natural consolidation effect towards higher end customers, a lot of that in John Deere's case, I think, is from the natural consolidation of the land to bigger and bigger farms. So a big problem was solved by a high quality tool, and that sowed the seeds for a great brand. If you watch the first 3 episodes of this series, you might be noticing a trend. Spoiler alert, we've got American Express, Brookfield, and Capital One Financial. All 3 of these are in some large portion financial institutions. So you would think that with John Deere, a tractor company, we would be breaking this mold, but not so fast. Because John Deere actually has a financial institution built into it. They take the local retailers, let them generate the loan for the customer, and then they buy it from them immediately. And after 155 years of business, you would think that they've run out of tricks. But there's actually something new they're doing that's really interesting. See, to go back to the Apple example, they always talk about hardware, software, and services. So here the hardware is obvious. They've got the tractors. The services are things like actually servicing the tractors and the financial institutions so that you can buy the products immediately. But the software they hadn't really done yet. They had software in the tractors and in the equipment, sure, but it was always sort of local to each machine. But what they're doing now with precision agriculture is connecting the machines between each other and taking the large leaps and bounds we've been making in AI and embedding them into the devices. The example they like to give for this is how they would spray for weeds in a field. They used to just spray across because obviously you can't have a single person go and target each weed because the field is too big for that. So what they do now is they use image recognition to precision spray each weed. But it gets a little deeper than that. So buckle up. I'm going to try to map this all out for us. Basic cycle goes, you've got a farmer who needs new equipment because they've got to keep up, but they don't want to buy this equipment outright. So what they do is they finance it through John Deere, which gives John Deere a little bit of a premium over the asking price. One of the big problems is that selling farm equipment is a low margin business. It's hard to make a lot of money because you've got to sell these big pieces of equipment. What they need is some high margin business within that low margin business. One of the ways they do that is through the finance side where they get that premium. Another way they do that is through the brand itself, because people will pay a premium for John Deere. And one of the reasons they do this is because it has a higher resale value in general. Older John Deeres just sort of look better, and the brand carries when you resale it, which the retailers like as well. But even a used tractor can be pretty expensive. So guess what? That new buyer, they're going to finance it as well. And this means that they're making a little bit more money than their competitors. They take that extra money and they put it back into research and development to make better features and better products for their customers, which by virtue of being a better product reinforces the brand as being high quality. But what makes John Deere buy now and not in the 150 years that it's been around? Well, it probably would have been better to buy it sooner, but there are two things that happened recently that I'm pretty excited about. The first one I've already mentioned, which is the improvement in the technology in the software side, which you can just push updates to. It's a sort of third bullet in the chamber where they had the financial and they had the brand. Now they're going to have a third source of high margin business, which already fits into the regular playbook because it's going to make the brand stronger and people are really going to have to buy it because they've got to keep up. They've got to keep competing. All three of these things feed on each other. The brand markup helps the financing helps the brand helps the software helps the financing, and it just goes around and around. This is one of those compounding cycles we want to look for because the returns are usually much greater than we would expect. And the second thing that they've done recently is that they've gone back to the mindset of, instead of building tractors, we're going to try to solve problems. And it's understandable why they would have been caught in this rut of just building tractors because that's really all the technology allowed them to do, and that was the best thing to do with the technology. But now they've got the software and everything is getting connected. They can zoom in a little bit more and say, what are the actual problems with your process? Where can we really help you? It plows all the way back to recognizing a problem and providing the customer with a high quality solution.